after an absolutely wild Sunday. Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We have so much to get into over the course of the next 2 hours. Reaction from everything we saw over the weekend. But Caroline, we start with the biggest upset of the day in the eyes of many because, frankly, a lot of people turned their TVs off. Philly goes up 21-0. People say, oh, this thing is over. We know how it's going to play out. Not so fast, my friends. The largest comeback in team history, the largest comeback in this rivalry, obviously. The Cowboys come flying back from down 21-0 to win this game 24-21, and it creates total chaos in the NFC because they're not dead yet. The Cowboys still have a shot at the playoffs, and now we still got to figure out what the hell to do with the Eagles. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, and good morning to Dallas Cowboys fans, because they're feeling good about themselves today. And look, last week when we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, we said, hey, look, is everything all well in Cowboy land? When adding Quinnen Williams at the trade deadline, did that really do to the Cowboys defense what it needed to keep this team in the postseason conversation? Or were they just playing the crummy, crappy Raiders? And we thought, okay, let's do it again. Do it one more time. Do it against a good team, because you're going to have to beat a playoff team in order to get into the playoffs. And that's exactly what they did last night. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say. In fact, I think it's fact. And we saw it last night. The Cowboys' defensive line outplayed the Philadelphia Eagles' offensive line. And if you would have told myself like 4 weeks ago that, I would have laughed in your face, because the Eagles had the best offensive line in the NFL and the Cowboys defense was an abject disaster. But they completely limited what Saquon Barkley did in the run game. I mean, Saquon Barkley was held to 22 yards on 10 carries. I mean, Jalen Hurts was the leading rusher on the day and had 33 yards. He had a couple of nice designed runs, but outside of that, the Eagles couldn't do anything in the run game. And that is the fact that they had a 21-0 lead at one point in that game. The Eagles want to run the football. That is the identity of this team, so much so they had A.J. Brown, one of the best receivers in the league, pouting on the sidelines because he wasn't getting enough attention. That's how much they want to commit to running the football. And they were up 21 points and couldn't just run it out, couldn't close it out then. I think that we have to start talking about the true upgrades that this Cowboys defensive front underwent at the trade deadline, because if they're able to outplay a Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, granted without Lane Johnson, but still a Philadelphia Eagles offensive line that's one of the best in the NFL, then sure, you can absolutely talk yourself into the Cowboys, I don't know, taking down the Chiefs, beating the Lions over the next couple of weeks, and then winning out on the rest of their schedule. Like, there is very much so a clear path for this Cowboys team.
Yeah, to your point, Saquon, we saw the numbers there a second ago. 10 rushes, 22 yards. I think what's important there is that he had one rush of 7 yards. Every other rush that he had in this game was 2 yards or less. 2 yards or less. So this was just one of those games where nothing got going for Saquon. And yet again, we're reminded that the real issue for the Eagles is they can't find balance. When they can run the ball, they can't throw the ball. When they can throw the ball, they can't run the ball. They can't seem to find any attempt at being able to do both at the same time. And it's what's really turning this season into so much frustration for Eagles fans. Look, any other franchise that we have a 21-0 lead and you watch them let that team come back today, we would be questioning everything about the DNA of the way they're built. Now, this is the defending Super Bowl champion, but still, they had the opportunity to eliminate the Cowboys, not just from this game, but from this season. The Eagles had the opportunity to just put an end to the entire Cowboys conversation, remind the world that they are the Philadelphia Eagles, and remind the world that the Dallas Cowboys shouldn't be in the playoffs, right? Like, they had the chance to do that. They couldn't get it done. And to me, Caroline, this is such a statement about the Cowboys and the way that they're built. To your point, we spent half of the season screaming, oh, if Dallas could just have an average defense, how good could they be? Well, we need to stop that conversation and have a new conversation, because as of today, they don't just have an average defense. That defensive line, you're right, dominated last night. Now, along with their offense being able to do what their offense can do, even on a night where CeeDee Lamb wasn't great, that defense is good enough. I'm looking squarely at the Cowboys and say, yeah, this looks like a playoff team. It's not even just about, well, can they sneak their way in? Their defense plays that way. You do that to Philly. You play that way against the Eagles. You win another game. Like the Raiders game meant nothing because the Raiders are trash. But this game against this Philly team, down 21-0 and still being able to scratch and claw your way back to victory, that says something, and this team passes the eye test as well. I think the Cowboys are showing that they're a playoff-worthy football team.
That's all we've said. That's all we've wanted from this Cowboys defense. Just be average at absolute best. Like, you don't even have to be great. You don't even have to be outstanding. You don't have to be consistent week over week over week. But with this offense, when Dak Prescott is humming the way that he is, when you have this George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb 1-2 punch that at this point might be an even better 1-2 punch than what the Eagles have with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And I have all of the respect in the world for what those two receivers are and the value that they bring to this Eagles team. But when this Cowboys offense is humming, the defense only has to be average. I mean, it was not that long ago that we were talking about if the Cowboys put up 24 points and they probably would have lost by 2 scores plus because the Cowboys had to put up 35, 40 points a game in order to win football games because that's how bad their defense was. But on a night where the Cowboys offense, it wasn't perfect. I mean, Dak threw a pick in the end zone. They fumbled the ball away. They had, 5 penalties in the first half? Like, it was sloppy. It was not good. The Cowboys offense didn't have to be perfect. They had to do just enough to put up the 24-point stat line to beat the Eagles. Like, if this Cowboys team turned the ball over in the red zone, fumbled the ball away, had all those sloppy penalties, then they would have lost. They would have gotten blown out. But no, this version of the Dallas Cowboys can afford to make mistakes against one of the best teams in the league and still find a way to win. This is a different Cowboys team. And I'll say it, look, I don't like doing this. I don't like to give Jerry Jones his flowers, but I think we've all been very critical of Jerry Jones, rightfully so, because the Micah Parsons trade was true buffoonery. But I think I might owe Jerry Jones an apology. I doubt this was a true master maniacal plan that Jerry Jones had all along. Like, ooh, I'm going to trade away Micah Parsons for, pennies on the dollar. And then I'm going to trade for Quinnen Williams at the trade deadline. And everything's falling into plan. No, it's failing upwards. That's exactly what it's been for this Cowboys team. Like a bunch of just random, strange moves that don't make a whole lot of sense that actually end up working out for the Dallas Cowboys. But I'll admit it. I'll swallow my pride. I'll admit where I was wrong. I don't even think I was wrong, really, but I do owe Jerry Jones an apology. It's failing
Yeah,
upwards.
when Quinnen plays the way he played last night, again disruptive. It's a reminder. Maybe the smartest thing that the Cowboys did is they kept their feet moving after a mistake because we all feel like the trade of Micah Parsons was a mistake. But at some point, you can either just sit there in your misery of that mistake, or you can try and figure out how to make the best of that moment moving forward, which I think they really did. And also, when we're talking about credit to the Cowboys organization, I want to go all the way back to the offseason and just give credit for George Pickens. Because, to me, at this point, it's pretty clear. You mentioned the best 1-2 punch. I agree with that. I just think we need to reassess who the one is in this situation. George Pickens right now is tougher to cover than CeeDee Lamb is. CeeDee had a bad night last night, had a couple of drops. He had a regrettable game. That doesn't change the fact that when they need a big play, it's Pickens that gets it. Now, you can argue, well, he's taking on the second corner. I don't think he is anymore. I think at some point they're shifting all of their coverages as best they can to try and minimize any of the damage that can be done. But when they needed a big catch on the drive to win this football game, it was Pickens that got it done with the beautiful little route, right? Like, it's Pickens that has become absolutely impossible to cover. Pickens does every bit the job that CeeDee does of high pointing and driving back to the football. He finds a way to make catches where catches feel impossible. I'm watching a wide receiver here right now that isn't the best two in the league. I'm watching a wide receiver that has become one of the best. Like, when we have a conversation about who the best wide receivers are in the NFL this year, George Pickens has to be in that conversation. And I'm not talking about the best sidekick. I'm talking about when we talk about Justin Jefferson and when we talk about Jamar Chase, George Pickens this year is playing at that level. He is a true wow number one. And the Cowboys bringing him in this offseason speaks to what they saw that Pittsburgh didn't maximize, and it speaks to making the most of this offense. They deserve some credit for doing that.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong because George Pickens, like this addition to the Cowboys team has been such a perfect fit that I was very skeptical when the Cowboys made this move because George Pickens was not only, not looking like a one on the field in Pittsburgh, but also like was an issue off the field as well. It was the personality issues. It was the locker room stuff. So I was very skeptical of this move. But George Pickens in Dallas is the most perfect fit. I can't go as far to say right now, though, that he is Dallas's number one, because I still do view CeeDee Lamb as a top 5 receiver in the NFL. It was a rough game for him yesterday, and he's had some rough games overall. Just the drops are an issue. I think George Pickens, what he is kind of like T. Higgins in Cincinnati. That I don't think that CeeDee Lamb is as good as Jamar Chase, but I still view them both in the same tier. That George Pickens is the kind of T. Higgins that can be A1 and look like A1 and get defensive attention like A1 whenever he needs to. That he is a very, very, very high-end 2 that would be anyone else's 1 if there was just a guy not named CeeDee Lamb on that team. But I just gave Jerry Jones his flowers, but I did mention some absolute buffoonery from Jerry Jones that we have seen, obviously, for a long time now, but especially this past calendar year. It would be the buffoonery of all buffoonery if Jerry Jones lets George Pickens walk in free agency. I don't know what you have to do. I don't care what you have to do to keep George Pickens in Dallas. Whether it's tagging him, whether it's extending him to a longer term deal, if it's paying him $25, 30, 32, $35 million a year, whatever it's going to take, Jerry Jones has to keep George Pickens in Dallas. Don't get cute with it. Don't think that you can, just move on from him and overcome it. And you can just plug any other receiver in that role. No. Jerry Jones, because he keeps talking about next year. They acquired Quinn Williams for next year. That they're going to, build for next year and for the future and beyond. George Pickens has to be part of that future.
The only hard part about that, I know it's very early. But right now, there is no team in the NFL with less cap space next year than the Dallas Cowboys, according to overthecap.com. For next
They'll figure
year,
it out.
They are currently $46 million over the cap for next year. Again, they'll figure these things out. The franchise tag next year is expected to be almost $29 million at the wide receiver position. Look, if they don't do that to George Pickens, somebody will. When you start to look at the teams that have a bunch of cap space next year, like, I don't know, the Titans with the most cap space, you think they wouldn't like to bring in a George Pickens to help as they open a new stadium with a young quarterback? The bidding war is going to be dynamic for George Pickens. Look, this is a big win for the Cowboys, and never too early to remind you that Thursday now on Thanksgiving Day, we have Cowboys versus Chiefs, a game that is going to have so much on the line that is going to be absolutely unbelievable. Why? Because the Chiefs also had an unbelievable game. Coming up next, we'll get you caught up on what happened in Arrowhead and what it means. The Chiefs staying alive. What's it mean for the AFC? absolutely electric ending to a wild game. You see it right there. The Kansas City Chiefs in overtime take down the Indianapolis Colts 23-20 in a game where, depending on how you consumed it, you have far different opinions of what happened here, right? If you look at the box score, Kansas City dominated this game in every possible way. If you were watching it, you kept watching early thinking, man, the Colts looked like they could just run away with this thing. Even though they're not playing particularly great, it looks like they could do this. And then the Chiefs did the thing that the Chiefs do. The Chiefs, Caroline, did the very thing that makes everybody afraid of Kansas City. They stayed in it long enough. And even as I was sitting there watching this game, and it was an 11-point game late, and everybody said, I heard the comments start coming about the death of the Chiefs and what's next. That 11-point deficit erased by a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, a field goal, and then an overtime field. Like, Kansas City just did what the Chiefs do. They found a way to win. And this, Carolina, is why everybody at some level is still afraid of KC.
I'll correct you there. You say the Chiefs did what the Chiefs do. The Chiefs did what the Chiefs used to do. The old Chiefs, the Chiefs of old.
Facts.
The Chiefs used to do this thing, and then they stopped doing it. And that's the reason why we all thought the Chiefs were dead. Because the Chiefs used to win games like this. These late game comebacks, this late game magic. That's 2024 Colts. That's Chiefs. 2024 Chiefs. Definitely wasn't 2024 Colts. 2023 Chiefs. 2025 Chiefs finds a way to win or to lose. My gosh, finds a way to lose these one-score games. And you heard me screaming that because I was screaming, the Chiefs are dead. The Chiefs are dead. When they had opportunities to come back but didn't. When in the lone possession in the first quarter, Patrick Mahomes throws an interception. When they had 3 red zone opportunities in the second quarter, and whether it was just incompletions or taking sacks, whatever it was, they had to settle for field goals. And so it felt like another day, another game where the Chiefs offense just kind of felt like it was sputtering. That magic wasn't there until the fourth quarter rolled around. They continued to commit to the run game, that Patrick Mahomes was connecting, that he had those massive, explosive, kind of chunk plays in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, I started getting flashbacks to the 2024 Chiefs of, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Are they going to do this? Are they going to, mount this comeback against one of the best teams in the AFC and in the NFL? And they did. This is what 2024 Chiefs did. This is what we've been waiting for the Chiefs to do. A fourth quarter comeback. You hold the Colts to 3 and out on their final 4 possessions of the game in the fourth quarter and in overtime, respectively. They made it happen. Mahomes' late game magic was back, even though we didn't see it in the first 3 quarters. They played great defense, which it looked like reminiscent of the 2024 Chiefs defense. Just everything seemed to click for this team late in the game. And the Chiefs aren't dead. In fact, the Chiefs feel like the magic might be back. Or at least it was yesterday.
Vegas right back on top of this. Oh, the Chiefs going to win the AFC. That's what we do inevitably. But you are right. I think there's one important thing that we saw from Kansas City yesterday that you mentioned there that is the key to everything in this year's NFL. Complementary football. The Chiefs have abandoned the run several times this year. This week in this game, they chose not to do that, right? Like, this is the same team that we saw give, I think it was 13 rushes to their running backs last week. And then in this game, Kareem Hunt by himself, 30 rushes for 104 yards. Like, Andy Reid came out of this saying, yes, we are going to run the football. And the minute they started to run the football effectively, now Indianapolis has to defend that. Then what happened? All of a sudden, we saw Andy Reid turn around and change some of the route concepts they were running in the second half. They were trying to run away from man coverage, and it worked over and over and over again, sideline to sideline. There was no stop for it, right? So there was a moment here where Andy Reid just flat out out-coached his opponent, and that is a reminder of the cheat code that is Andy Reid. Now, it's a reminder of the frustration because this plays across all levels. We already talked about the Eagles losing in their game. Well, what were they incapable of doing? Playing complementary football. And in this game that we're talking about right here, what were the Colts incapable of doing? Playing complementary football. Like, at some point, what becomes interesting here is the Chiefs looked back, they went back in the lab, and they figured it out. The Colts need to figure out how they're going to win football games when teams stop Jonathan Taylor. Because when you look at the elite teams, whoever we think they are in the AFC, most of them can take away the run to some level. This is now the second or third time this year we've seen the Colts really need to rely on Daniel Jones to win, and it hasn't worked out. Like, I'm not putting all of this on Daniel Jones, and I'm not pressing the panic button, to be clear. But I do think that part of the conversation of who Daniel Jones is can you win when teams take away Jonathan Taylor? The answer to that yesterday was no, and that becomes really concerning.
And even still, in a day where Jonathan Taylor had 58 yards, didn't find the end zone once, where Shane Steichen really abandoned the run. I mean, Jonathan Taylor ran the ball 3 times in the second half in overtime. He got the ball 4 times. He caught 1 pass, ran the ball 3 times in the second half. And that's kind of the conundrum. It's really easy for us to play armchair play caller on a Monday is, okay, well, Jonathan Taylor ran the ball 3 times for a cumulative 1 yard, but you're also not going to win football games when that man right there doesn't touch the football. So do you continue to run the ball even when it's not working and hope you pop off a big one? Or at some point, do you have to, adjust your game plan and adjust to what the defense is giving you? Like that, I think that there's a fair argument to be made for both of those things. But at the end of the day, Shane Steichen decided to move away from the run game. So I think that's a fair critique of Shane Steichen today. And on the other side, Andy Reid will give him his flowers for committing to the run game when Patrick Mahomes didn't look like Patrick Mahomes in the first 3 quarters. But on 4th and 3 and a half to have it drive, he put the ball in the hands of his best playmaker in Patrick Mahomes. And what did he do? He made a play. Surprise. It's not rocket science here. But I think it is a fair concern for this Colts team that when you take away Jonathan Taylor, when you say make 17 beat us, make Daniel Jones beat us with the ball in his hands. He didn't do it yesterday. But also, that's the Colts on the road against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and it went to overtime, and it was the difference of 3 points. Like, I think that if you ask Daniel Jones to win a game for you on a day where Jonathan Taylor is held in check for the most part, a day where Jonathan Taylor wasn't able to be Jonathan Taylor, I think they can win you a game. Can they win you 3 games straight in the postseason when you're going to have to go up against the Broncos defense, or you're going to have to go up against these magic makers like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes? I don't think so.
And look, I think that there's a fine line. And what we learned from both teams that blew leads yesterday, the Colts blew a lead, the Eagles blew a lead. You've got to be able to run the football, especially in playoff situations, in big games. You got to be able to run the football if for no reason other than simply to control the clock. And they weren't able to do that. To your point, they got away from it. I don't think there's a big sweeping takeaway of panic for me for the Colts. I just think they have to learn how to close these games out. They've got to learn how to impart their will in these situations. They got to learn what the situation looks like to go out and eliminate. Because I will use Zombieland, a great movie for all of you that enjoy weird horror movies. They always say the rule there is the double tap, right? Like you never kill a zombie once. You have to kill a zombie twice. So when you think it's dead, you have to shoot it again. That's how you got to be with the Chiefs. Like you can't single tap the Chiefs. You have to double tap the Chiefs. Like whatever happens with Kansas City, when you think they're dead, you have to shoot them again. Otherwise, the Chiefs are going to chief, which is exactly what they did. What about one other big outcome yesterday where the Rams rammed? I think you want to talk about games that do shape narratives. The Bucs got their asses kicked, and I don't even think that's being polite to what they put on the table. Like the Bucs did one of those. They need to write letters of apology to their grandmas for making them watch this. 34-7 is your final. Devontae Adams with an absolutely huge game, and Matt Stafford is absolutely cooking right now. The Rams are just beyond hot, and they showed it against the Buccaneers.
And it could have been way worse. Like this game was on the trajectory to be like 100-7 kind of game. Allow me to take a little bit of a victory lap here. Allow me to talk my talk a little bit, because for the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've been banging on the table. The Los Angeles Rams are the best team in the NFL. I kept hearing all these conversations of where's the elite team? Where's the complete team in the league? And I'm like, hello, it's the Rams. They've been doing it week over week over week, and we all just keep ignoring it. Frank Schwab, who continued to put the Eagles in the #1 spot in his NFL power rankings because he said, well, the Eagles are the reigning Super Bowl champions. Maybe they don't look totally complete, but they just keep winning. Well, we saw the Eagles implode yesterday against the Cowboys, and the Rams dominate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that right now is a playoff team, but I don't know how long they'll be a playoff team. So finally, I feel like it has all come to a close, that we can all, as a football society, agree that the Rams are the best team in the NFL, that Matthew Stafford deserves to be league MVP. I mean, Matthew Stafford had about as close to a perfect game yesterday as you can get. He completed his first, 13, 14 passes. He was 25 of 35 yesterday, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, only took the 1 sack. Like, Matthew Stafford is playing at such a high level. Matthew Stafford is playing such clean football. And yet, Fitz, I don't feel like we're talking about it enough. I feel like the general football society is looking at what the Rams are doing, what Matthew Stafford is doing, and it's like, yeah, but yeah, but the Rams are the team.
Uh, yeah, uh, yes, they are.
That's what everyone wants to do with the Rams. Like, why?
No. So
why?
here's the thing.
What more do we want?
Look, the Rams. You're right. The Rams are the hottest team in the NFL, and they are by far the hottest team in the NFL. And man, I believe in everything that they do. I believe in their coach. I think your analysis on Stafford is spot on, and he is the MVP, and he's playing hotter than anybody. And by the way, when Devontae plays that way, while Puka's playing that way, like, that's really incredible. They didn't even need Kyron Williams to really run the football. They didn't need the very balance I just talked about. Their defensive line is absolutely game wreckers all over the place. You're right. A week ago, we watched the Rams and the Seahawks play a very close game. So to me, the class of the NFC is still the Rams and the Seahawks. I'm not changing. Like, this game was an absolute blowout because the Rams are hot, and I think the Buccaneers might sneaky suck. I think we got lost somewhere in the sauce of the Buccaneers, only to find out now that they're just not as good as we thought they were. So yes, this is absolutely the Rams. Clearly, they look like they are one of the elite teams. My mind didn't change yesterday based on what I saw a week ago between the Rams and Seattle. I think if the Rams and Seattle played 10 times right now, each of them would win 5 games, and they are the 2 best teams. They're the 2 teams that I trust the most in the NFC. That being said, I do hear you, especially after the way that Matt looked. I'm not taking anything away. I promise. I'm not taking anything away from Stafford. It just sounds like I am. I just feel like if I went into yesterday saying I think the Rams and the Seahawks are very close, I still think they're very close, even though the Rams looked absolutely untouchable yesterday.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I feel like you missed an opportunity to use that. Yeah,
I did.
It's right there. It's right there for the taking. Thank you. I'll be here all week because I'm taking off Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving. I feel like we do a lot of butting with the Rams, right? Like, the Chiefs were down 11 points against the Colts at home. They found a way to win in overtime, and we're saying the Chiefs aren't dead. The Chiefs are back. The Chiefs. And we're right in saying that. That's not wrong. I'm not saying that you are wrong if you feel that way, because I feel the same way. The Rams just absolutely positively clobbered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football, and we're like, yeah, but, like, remember when they almost lost to the Seahawks, but they didn't?
That's fair.
Like,
That's fair.
Every win, I feel like we find a way to poke holes in it for the Rams, and not just taking it for face value and saying this team is dominant.
Yeah, you are 100% right. And I think what's getting lost in the sauce a little bit for me is I am agreeing that they are a dominant team. I am agreeing that they are on that top shelf, one of the 3 best teams in the NFL right now. That feels very clear to me. I don't think it's clear that they're wildly better than Seattle. That's all. Like, I'm not ready to crown them NFC champions because I still really believe in the Seahawks. But that being said, you are right, and there is no when you
The
look at
Seahawks
the
almost
NFC,
lost to the Titans.
The Seahawks play with their food, then they exploded, then they played with their food some more. Like the Seahawks.
But the Seahawks, they could have beaten the Titans by more. They just didn't. The Rams did to the Bucks what the Seahawks should have done to the Titans, but didn't.
That is a fair point. Look, that's fair. All right, we'll keep breaking down the contenders in the NFC because we're trying to figure out who we can actually trust in the NFC North, and maybe the answer is nobody. Overreactions. I'll give you a stat that is staggering about just how bad JJ McCarthy has been. We'll do it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Ian Rappaport tweeting out the Giants are firing defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, according to me and Mike Garafolo. The first move by interim coach Mike Kafka. Now, I think it's important to realize that this is a move by an interim coach, and everybody on that coaching staff right now is essentially trying to prove that they have the ability to be coaches. And there's some that think that Kafka is trying to coach his way into consideration for this job. So the Giants organization choosing to give him the autonomy to change defensive coordinators after blowing a double-digit lead in a loss 34-27 to the Detroit Lions in overtime. I think, Caroline, if I had told you Friday that the Giants went to overtime with the Lions, we'd say, oh, that's pretty good. But to see the way it went down for that loss doesn't feel pretty good to Giants fans.
No, it doesn't. And look, this moving on from Shane Bowen, I don't think should come as a surprise to anyone. In fact, I said after they decided to move on from, gosh, why is their coach's name escaping me?
Brian Daboll.
Oh my gosh, Daboll. Thank you. My goodness, Brian Daboll. When they decided to move on from Brian Daboll, I said, well, shouldn't Shane Bowen be the one to fall on the sword? I get it. I understand if you decide that you've made your mind up about the head coach, better to move on from him now, get a head start on the coaching search rather than wait. But I thought that Shane Bowen was an easy, one to kind of fall on the sword because the defense was so atrocious. And there were reasons that you could point to as to why the offense was sputtering. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo was hurt. Jackson Dart was hurt. So this really doesn't come as much of a surprise to me. I also don't really know what it does. Like this doesn't drastically change the direction of the Giants season, in my opinion. All it is, hey, we acknowledge that the defense isn't good enough. Third worst in total defense in the NFL. We're saying, hey, this guy's not good enough. Mike Kafka, I think also, he might be looking around and saying, this is my audition. Like, this is my job interview. I'm actively coaching for a potential opportunity to get the head coaching job. And I want to prove, and I want to have the right people around me to prove that I can do it. Because I think, Fitz, Mike Kafka is in the running of potentially getting the head coaching job in New York.
Well, there are several outlets that are reporting he's getting consideration. And I would argue, even if he's not getting consideration with the Giants, he is showing the rest of the league what he's capable of. And this is a chance to put that on film, right? And film is what matters. Just a reminder, the Giants, who are quite certain that they have their quarterback, obviously. The Giants, if the draft were today, would have the second pick in the NFL draft. The Titans would have the first. The Giants would have the second. So certainly, as bad as this season is going, if you're a Giants fan, you're looking around saying, well, once we find the right coach, combined with the fact that we have our young quarterback, Cam Scatterbo, is going to be healthy, and then our defense is going to be healthy and great, and new defense. Like, you can find hope if you're a Giants fan, especially if you end up with a high pick and you don't need a quarterback. It's going to be a very weird draft as it sits right now. The top two teams picking would be teams that don't need quarterbacks, which means they're going to be able to trade their stuff all over the place. But I will remind everybody,
it's going to be a trade bonanza.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. But I would remind everybody that trading for young quarterbacks isn't always exactly what you need, because some teams get young quarterbacks and it doesn't help. Let's get to some NFC North overreactions. Like, everybody fired up about the NFC North. And let's start with the Minnesota Vikings, who have their young quarterback, okay? I want everyone to see this JJ McCarthy stat that I found out there. This thanks to True Media. So I got to give True Media the credit for this number. I did not come up with it. They did. JJ McCarthy now ranks 851st out of 852. That's 851 out of 852 in EPA Lord. Per dropback. So that's what they expect from a play. EPA per dropback amongst qualified passers since 2000 per True Media. The only player below McCarthy is Jamarcus Russell. You could make the argument from that stat that J.J. McCarthy is a modern Jamarcus Russell, the largest draft flop, arguably, in NFL history. I say that because, look, when you start talking about disappointing, Vikings fans have spent months telling me they don't give a damn about Sam Darnold. If they don't miss Sam Darnold's going to melt down in the playoffs, and we don't need that. Okay? My argument to that months ago on Inside Coverage was, you know what's worse than melting down in the playoffs? Not even getting close. And guess what's exactly happened to the Vikings? They got flippant with their quarterback situation. They thought they could make it work. It isn't working. The kid that they have in there right now is not good enough, at least today. There is no hope for this team this year, and this is a roster that was supposed to be built to win right now. Caroline, I think the Vikings are one of the most disappointing teams in modern sports, not just this year in the NFL, in modern sports. They were too damn good to go from 14 wins to this while they didn't change everything else around him. It's just the quarterback that they decided to get flippant with, and it's just bit him in the butt.
JJ McCarthy is brutal to watch. Absolutely brutal. And if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, the same thing like when you break up with your ex that you thought was absolutely terrible, that you could do better than, and then they end up marrying like someone wonderful and, good looking and rich. And it's like, well, dang, like I could have had that. That's exactly what the Vikings are doing. They're looking at Sam Darnold and what he is for the Seattle Seahawks, one of the best teams in the National Football League. And they're looking around at JJ McCarthy, who's completing 12 of 19 passes for 87 yards and 2 picks, and thinking, how in the world did we get here? And I went into this season, and I'll admit I was wrong. I thought that JJ McCarthy could not fail. I thought that the Minnesota Vikings provided an infrastructure that was infallible for a young quarterback. You have Kevin O'Connell, who's one of the brightest offensive minds in football. You have Justin Jefferson, who is one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in football. You have Aaron Jones running the ball, who is a veteran in this league. It was all of the pieces for JJ McCarthy to succeed as a young quarterback. But if anything, honestly, Fitz, it feels like he's gotten worse week over week over week. And I think at this point, if you're Minnesota, you have to figure out what JJ McCarthy is for you at some point, because we're in year 2. Once you get into year 3, you're going to have to start talking about, like, is JJ McCarthy our franchise quarterback or not? He hasn't played a lot of football. He's continued to get banged up. He hasn't shown that he's gotten better week over week. So I think, you bring up that, the Vikings have their young quarterback. I don't know if they do. If I had to say today, which of course you don't, and you never have to make your mind up in the NFL before you have to. But if I had to decide today, if the Minnesota Vikings need to start looking at drafting a quarterback or acquiring another quarterback in free agency and moving on from JJ McCarthy, I would say unequivocally, yes.
Yeah, they're going to have to bring somebody in next year to push him. And I would just, to your coaching point, I will remind everybody, Danny Green, I worked with here. And Danny and I were sitting here talking about with Yahoo. We were sitting here talking about one time with the Spurs with Pop, right? And they spent all week working on what they were going to do in this game. And all the guys got out on the floor and they were just getting destroyed. And Danny said, I remember coming to the bench and Pop is like, we worked on this in practice all week. What is happening? And he said, I just had to look at Pop and be like, we're not good enough. And I just want to remind people sometimes that no matter how great the coaching is, players still have to be good enough to execute it. I'm not sure J.J. McCarthy is good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. All right, how about these for overreactions? The division-leading Bears have Super Bowl upside. Overreaction or not?
Maybe just like a smidge of an overreaction. I would lean overreaction. Their Super Bowl upside, I think, is maybe lofty. But also, like, if you want to argue that they do, go for it. I just look at the teams that they've beaten. The Steelers, the Vikings, the Giants, the Joe Burrow-less Bengals, the Saints, the Commanders, the Raiders. Like, yes, they do get credit for beating up on bad teams. And I don't think that we're talking nearly enough about an 8-3 Chicago Bears team. I think week over week, we've seen Caleb Williams get better. I think that because there was a lot of criticism about the Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams marriage, like, were they really a fit stylistically? But I think Caleb Williams, who's a guy who's proven that he can get a little finicky, he can start to melt down a little bit. I think Ben Johnson has been the perfect kind of calming sense for Caleb Williams of like teaching him how to be a goldfish, setting him up in positions where he doesn't have to do too much or think too much. I think Super Bowl upside, while it's a little bit lofty, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you should feel incredibly excited about the direction of this football team, because they're absolutely a team that I think can play spoiler in the postseason.
Super Bowl upside is an overreaction. They don't have Super Bowl upside. But you know what? Who cares? Like, you're getting better. Like, you're going to be in a much better situation for the next several years. And most importantly, you're winning games this year. I've got a buddy that every time we go to the casino only puts every single dollar that he has to gamble that day on black at the roulette wheel. And I've watched him do it over and over and over again. And sometimes he wins thousands of dollars and takes everybody to dinner at the end of the night. Now, is that a sustainable way to gamble? No, that isn't. Is it going to win him every time? No. But that night at the casino, we're having a great time. Like, just enjoy it, Chicago. You're rolling the dice. You're putting it all on black. You're winning every week. Enjoy it. Who cares what any of us think? What about this? All right, I'll give you another overreaction. I'll make the statement. You tell me overreaction or no. The Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, now the best running back in all of football. Overreaction or no?
I don't think that's an overreaction at all. I buy into that 100%. Because who else would be in consideration for that? Saquon Barkley? Well, we just talked about how Saquon Barkley is not having that great of a season. I mean, has just over 600 yards, well over the halfway point of the season. Like, Saquon doesn't look like 2024 Saquon. Derrick Henry, I know he had 2 touchdowns yesterday, but Derrick Henry hasn't been overly explosive. That entire Ravens offense hasn't been overly explosive. I mean, Jonathan Taylor would be the one. So maybe it is an overreaction. I would say Jonathan Taylor still gets the nod. I just talked myself out of it. It's Jonathan Taylor, and then it's Jahmyr Gibbs. And then I think there's a gap.
Right now, leading rushers in the NFL, Jonathan Taylor with 1,197 yards. James Cook, sneaky with 1,084 yards from Buffalo. Jahmyr Gibbs at 951. Also, should be noted, right behind Jahmyr Gibbs is Devon Achane for all the conversation of how broken the Dolphins are. So, look, I think he's the most explosive back in the NFL and maybe the most explosive player in the NFL. Like, there's nobody that scares me more when he has the ball in his hands than Jahmyr Gibbs, but I still think Jonathan Taylor is a better running back. So I will take Jonathan Taylor, should be MVP even after a bad game, but I think it's neck and neck. All right, what about this one? All right, we've given you a Vikings one. We've given you a Bears one. We've given you a Lions one. Let's get a Packers one. The Packers are 7-3-1. And they're underachieving. True or false? What do you think? Is that an overreaction?
No, I don't think that's an overreaction because the Packers had a legitimate Super Bowl upside going into this season. Once they traded for Micah Parsons, they pushed all of their chips into the middle and said, we're winning a Super Bowl. This is our Super Bowl roster. And I don't think their record is indicative of how much the Packers have really struggled this season, how inconsistent Jordan Love is, how inconsistent this team is as a whole. I mean, losing to the Carolina Panthers. And look, I think that the Carolina Panthers are going to win the NFC South. I think the Carolina Panthers are a playoff team. But the Packers should be a better team than the Carolina Panthers. So, yeah, I will buy into the fact that Green Bay, even though they are 7-3-1, they have underachieved because the record is good, but the product that we've seen on the field week over week, it doesn't match our expectations.
The Bears are up a half a game on the Packers because of that dreaded tie. And then they're up a game on the Lions. Who wins the division? Bears, Packers, or Lions to you?
I still think it's the Packers because I think with 2 matchups upcoming between the Packers and the Bears, I think the Packers win at least one of them, and the Packers are able to, piece enough wins together to win that division.
Yeah,
but if the Bears win it, I will be 0% surprised.
I will be personally. I will be stunned if the Bears win this division just because of what's left ahead of them. It's just the schedule for whatever it's been so far and wherever their wins have come. The Bears now have the Eagles, the Packers twice, the 49ers, and the Lions remaining. Like, those are just – they have tough game after tough game. They have the Browns in there too. But they have, at this point, the Eagles, the Packers, the Browns, the Packers, the 49ers, the Lions. Like, boy, this Green Bay team is going to have to be really good to get through that, which is why, sneakily, I don't know. I think there's still room for the Lions to make a run. I just mentioned the Browns being a opponent. Well, things got a lot more interesting with the Browns yesterday after Shedeur broke the streak of starting quarterbacks that can't win their first start. What's it mean after what we saw yesterday? We'll break it down. After today's 24-10 win over the Raiders, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski declined to name a starting quarterback for next week's game versus the 49ers. That comes from Adam Schefter after Shedeur Sanders is able to do what seems almost impossible. He becomes the first Browns quarterback to win his first start since the team moved back to Cleveland. So the question here, Caroline, which is crazy stat to give you, is who should we be talking the most about after what we saw yesterday in the Browns-Raiders game? Is it Shedeur? Is it Myles Garrett, who continues to be historic? Or is it the now fired offensive coordinator of the Raiders, Chip Kelly?
I think it should be Shedeur. I mean, look, did Shedeur have the most flawless outing? No. He was 11 of 20, 209 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But I think we should talk about Shedeur because I saw potential. And last week when we talked about what I wanted to see from Shedeur, I said I want to see him start to put the pieces together. I want to see him stop taking so many sacks because that was one of his big problems when he took over in relief of Dylan Gabriel. That was one of his big problems at Colorado. He only took one sack. And that's going up against Max Crosby. And I know that's not a great Raiders defense, but still, Max Crosby is going to get his. And he didn't against a quarterback that has a sack-taking problem. So check for Shedeur there. I think we saw, the 3rd and 8. They're backed up in their own territory. And Shedeur Sanders rolled out, was able to beat the blitz, very calm, and completed a 52-yard pass to Isaiah Bond. I mean, look, check for Shedeur there. Not freaking out when he was facing pressure and able to make a big play happen when it felt like the play was kind of dead to rights. Now, he was fine. Like, he wasn't outstanding. He wasn't amazing. I mean, there was an opportunity there that Jerry Jeudy just dropped away because Jerry Jeudy wanted to get cute with it and do his own Bambi impression. So that's another play that could have been a positive in the Shedeur Sanders column that we're just not really talking about. He was fine. He was not outstanding. He was not incredible. He was not amazing. He was not show-stopping. I didn't need him to be incredible and show-stopping. What he did show me was he's starting to put the pieces together. He's starting to show me that he does have potential in this league. So I think we need to be talking about Shedeur Sanders.
I think in some levels in this game, we need to be talking about Chip Kelly, who's obviously been fired by the Raiders. And Chip is ironically his first name because he decided it was okay to have a tight end Chip, Myles Garrett, several times in this game, which was just wild strategy.
So dumb.
The Raiders' offense is broken. So I want to say this about Shedeur, and I want to make sure that we have some context in this conversation because inevitably these things get cut off and people have a lot to say without listening to the entirety of what we're talking about. The hard part for me is that when we want to make a big sweeping statement about what we saw, we have to acknowledge who they played against. I had somebody that worked in the league for years call me last night and ask me, how did the Raiders get this bad? How is their defense this bad? And he said to me, I think they've got one player, Max Crosby, that should even be starting in the league. Everybody else shouldn't. And I say that because this is what we do. Like last week, I said the same thing. When everybody said, what did we learn about the Cowboys? My answer on this show was, we didn't learn anything because they were playing the Raiders. And my answer today on Shedeur, as tough as this is for people to hear, is I don't think we really learned anything about Shedeur because he's playing the Raiders. Now, if he went out and had an abject disaster of a game, people would have hopped on it. And that's why I think it's a smart take that I saw somebody make on social media that yesterday was kind of a worst-case scenario. Because if you're anti-Shedeur, then you got enough out of the way the game played where he did miss some opportunities downfield, and there were some times that he didn't read the field particularly well. You got enough if you're anti-Shedeur to stack onto that. If you're pro-Shedeur, you got enough to stack onto that. And all it did was make everybody more divided in what is a really nuanced conversation. I'm not rooting for or against Shedeur Sanders. I just want every player that comes into the NFL to have the opportunity to be successful. I just think what we want to do is make a huge sweeping statement out of this game. And Caroline, I think the real statement is we didn't learn much of anything. He had a couple of really nice plays that only Shedeur could make. And then he had some moments that were tough to watch, and that's probably part of the young progression of a quarterback. But I don't know that we saw anything in this that suddenly changes anybody. If you're pro-Shedeur, you're still pro-Shedeur. If you're anti-Shedeur, you're still anti-Shedeur. And if you're just trying to analyze what you saw, which is where I am, I'm looking at it saying, y'all, like, I'm sorry, it doesn't make for a great hot take, but the reality of it is we didn't really learn anything to me about the kid.
I think we did. I think that we learned that he is taking those steps. How big are those steps? That's the question. And I think this is, we all want definitive answers. if we see a massive, a huge day from a guy, it's like, okay, yep, it is so obvious to all of us that he's the guy moving forward. If you see just epic failure, then you're like, okay, that's easy to make my mind up. He's not the guy moving forward. It's a performance like we saw yesterday, to your point, that's kind of in the mucky middle, that you can make a case for or against this guy that makes Kevin Stefanski's job and the coach's job incredibly difficult. I will give Shedeur Sanders his flowers all day long because I think he deserves them after yesterday. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. It's not like it was, an MVP caliber performance. Like, let's not get crazy here. But I think he had a good day. He had a nice day. And Deion Sanders was totally right for all of his celebrating that he was doing in the box.
Hell
But if I'm Kevin Stefanski and if I am the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, whenever Dillon Gabriel gets healthy, Dillon Gabriel's going back out there and he's going to be my starter. Now, Kevin Stefanski has not named a starter. I think he wants to, play this very patiently, and I don't blame him for that. But Dillon Gabriel is your starting quarterback. Like this, I'll approach this quarterback situation the same way that we do any other quarterback situation in the NFL. That when your starting quarterback gets healthy, your starting quarterback is your starting quarterback again. And you want your backup to come in and win you a couple of games and do his job. But when the starter comes back, the starter is the starter. I don't think that we need to make any sort of exceptions just because it's a very unique quarterback situation in Cleveland. I don't think that you give up on Dillon Gabriel all of a sudden because Shedeur Sanders is able to beat the Raiders. And now if Shedeur Sanders was able to dominate against the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe it's a different story. But Shedeur came in, he did his job. Dillon Gabriel's the starter.
If I were Kevin Stefanski today, my hope is, and this sounds terrible the way I'm going to couch this, but I hope you'll understand what I'm saying. My hope is that we can keep Dillon Gabriel in concussion protocol for another week, honestly, because what that gives me the opportunity to do is get another piece of sample size information out of Shedeur against a 49ers team that's much better, right? Like 49ers defense is going to present much greater challenges, right? And so if I have the opportunity, what I would love if I'm Kevin Stefanski is to see what he looks like against a truly capable football team. I would argue, just for full context, I would argue right now no team, including the Tennessee Titans, is playing worse football than the Raiders. I've been a Raiders fan my entire life. This is truly the worst Raiders football team I've ever watched, and I watched them go through multiple 2-win seasons. This is a team that I think is one of the worst we've seen in modern NFL times. So I need to see Shedeur against a capable football team. So if I'm Stefanski, I would love a situation where I could just get another week. And if Shedeur goes in and plays really well against San Francisco, great. That's reason. Now I have enough stacked evidence to say, hey, we're gonna ride the hot hand. We're letting, just like running backs, sometimes one guy gets hot, one guy doesn't. Like, you ride the hot hand. You get that. Or if he goes in against 49ers and just struggles, now you get the really easy reason to take him off the field. The hardest part about this back and forth, and this goes all the way back to April and what we said when he was drafted on our Yahoo shows. The hardest part about this draft is when you draft a quarterback in the 3rd round and then a big-name quarterback in the 5th round, you've automatically created this situation where now, how do you give either of them the time that they really need to figure out if one of them can be great without suddenly going back and forth? And once you start rotating quarterbacks, that doesn't help Dillon. That doesn't help Shedeur. It doesn't help anybody. And that's the situation they're in. Like, to your point, if they stick with Shedeur, I think the message is we're giving up on Dillon for the rest of the year. And if they give up on Dillon, then the message really is we've decided he's not what we need and we're done with him. If they're ready to say that, great, do it. But if they're not, man, they haven't gotten enough proof from time on task with Dillon. They won't get enough time on task with Shedeur. And all that's happening is they're going to win just enough games that they won't be in a good proximity to actually get a quarterback next year should they decide they need one. This all is just lose, lose, lose for the Browns, even in a win. And it doesn't make me feel good to say that. That's not what I'm rooting for. It's just the way my logical brain stacks what we're seeing.
I think that's the correct take, because the only thing worse than not having a quarterback is having two, and you're not really sure what they are at this level. I know this is such a moot point at this point, and I've said it so many times until I'm blue in the face, but this is why you don't draft two quarterbacks in the same draft, because you find yourself in this kind of conundrum. It's a great problem to have when you have two great quarterbacks, when you have two quarterbacks that are so good you don't know which one should be the starter. It's a completely different situation when you have two quarterbacks that are young, that you're not sure are starters in this league, that you've seen some good from, which we've seen some good from both of these guys, and we've seen a whole lot of bad from both of these guys as well. So look, if Dylan Gabriel clears concussion protocol for next week, I know I would start Dylan Gabriel, but to your point, if we can get more of a sample size from Shedeur Sanders to realize, okay, what is he? Is he starting to piece things together? Is he starting to make some progress to being a starter in this league? Or was it just the Raiders? Is he actually, in fact, making strides, or was he able to capitalize against a bad team? But I don't think that you can hold Dylan Gabriel back just so you can get that sample size. I don't think that you can say Shedeur is going to be our starter and Dylan's going to be our backup, because that makes it's a confusing message to the locker room. That's a confusing message to the fan base. And that's a confusing message to both of those quarterbacks. The old adage is an adage for a reason, because it's true. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And you can't afford to stunt the development of either of these two guys if you do believe there is a possibility that one of these two can be your future.
This whole quarterback situation just reminds me of distracted cleaning. Like, it's a Saturday and you're cleaning your house and you're cleaning the kitchen. You're like, all right. And then halfway through you get distracted and you're putting the mail away in this room. Now suddenly you're cleaning the dining room, but you never really finished the kitchen. And at the end of Saturday, you look around and you're like, I spent all day cleaning.
Nothing's
and I didn't actually clean anything because I couldn't stay time on task focused long enough to clean one thing all the way. That's what they're doing with the quarterbacks. Weird as it sounds. Quickly do want to say congratulations. We have all week to break down Myles Garrett. We will break down Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, 3 sacks in this game. Absolutely electric day by him. Lost in the conversation about Shedeur was just seeing the joy on Myles Garrett's face, which was absolutely incredible. We will break down why he's the defensive player of the year, I should say. Got plenty of time to do that. In the meantime, speaking of big performances, what do we make of the performances we got this weekend from some of the best in the AFC? Because I'm telling you, I got trust issues. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Yahoo Sports Daily. I got trust issues with a bunch of the best teams in the AFC, especially after what we saw yesterday. We're going to roll out the couch and get a little bit of therapy in and try and decompress on all of that. But in the meantime, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, we will start with 3 points. Caroline, what is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
A little news in the W. For the second straight year, the Dallas Wings will get the number 1 overall pick after they won the draft lottery yesterday. Now, the Seattle Storm and Minnesota Lynx were also in contention for the number 1 overall pick, which feels a little bit funky because the Lynx and Storm were both playoff teams this past season, but they were in the lottery based off of trades. We'll also see the Washington Mystics and the Chicago Sky round out the top 5. But Dallas gets a wonderful opportunity for the second year in a row to bolster up a roster that is good, but was not nearly good enough, only winning 19 games this past season. So who will they take number 1 overall to match their number 1 overall pick last season in Paige Beckers? Well, the obvious name that is going to be coming up is AZ Fudd. And what she would add to this team is 3-point shooting. She is such an electric sharp shooter to add on top of the offense that Paige Beckers brings to this team. And of course, the obvious tie, they were UConn teammates. They already have that built-in chemistry and relationship together. They won a national championship at UConn together last season. Don't need to reinvent the wheel here, okay? You have two people that have great chemistry and are also in a relationship. So anytime that you can, reunite people in a relationship, you can reunite people that played in college together and had a ton of success in college together, that feels obvious. So AZ Fudd, I think, will be the hot, popular name that starts coming up as the number 1 overall pick. But let's not ignore Lauren Betts. Another one of the needs of the Dallas Wings is a big-time post player, someone that can have a big presence in the post, someone that can get rebounds for a team that could add some size. They're looking for a big, and there's no better big to be offered in this draft than Lauren Betts, standing at 6'7". She is the focal point for one of the best teams in women's college basketball this year in UCLA. There's also a whole lot of buzz for Awa Pham, a player from overseas, from Spain. She is also getting some looks. It's not just the number 1 overall pick, but potentially a top 3 pick as well. So not only looking in college, but also overseas as well. But if I had to put my money on it, AZ Fudd's heading to Dallas, and we'll see an AZ Fudd Paige Beckers reunion next year. Maybe, we shall see, but it's Dallas's choice to make.
First, we got to actually see games in the W next year, but I'm in for singing Reunited and It Feels So Good. Okay, there we go. I'll get to work now. I'll get to my first point of the hour, and it comes in the form of a Major League Baseball trade. We got a swap of veterans, a player-for-player swap. The Mets and Rangers finalizing a trade that sends second baseman Marcus Semien to the Mets and outfielder Brandon Nimmo to the Rangers. Now, Nimmo, by the way, just lifelong Met, huge fan favorite, been with the organization since 2011. This one seems to hurt the hearts of Mets fans a little bit, but I think everybody has an understanding of what we're doing here. These are two older players that are being moved for financial reasons. It's a bit of a defensive upgrade for the Mets. They get it, Semien coming in the second baseman spot. That's fine. If that was the only portion of the move, I think it would be concerning because it feels like a bit of a downgrade, but it does give the Mets the flexibility to spend money this offseason, which is the expectation to now address the outfield. Whereas Nimmo comes into the Rangers are getting somebody there that obviously has a big contract and a lot of money coming over the next several years, so we'll see what that means. Semien's offense has dipped a bit since 2023, but obviously his defense is still elite. It's a Golden Glove, just won his second Golden Glove, so he has a real opportunity to come in and contribute. These are pieces being moved around in what feels like the deck being shuffled a little bit. I'm not sure it makes a massive consequential difference by itself, but when you stack it with the rest of the moves that are expected to come this offseason, it definitely speaks to a reshaping for both of these organizations. Now, Caroline, let's get to our top point of the day, and it comes in the form of the therapy I need from you, my friend, because I have no idea who the hell we can actually trust in the AFC. We talked a lot about trust, but I want to talk about Achilles heels. I want to talk about the fatal flaw. I want to talk about the reason we can't trust. The biggest issue that holds us back from the best of the best in the AFC being trustworthy. Let's start with the number 1 seed, the New England Patriots, who, by the way, they beat the Bengals, but I kept watching this thinking, what in the hell is happening right now? The Bengals had every opportunity to win this football game, which was shocking to me because the Patriots are clearly better. Now we get Will Campbell injury news. It looks like he's going to be put on injured reserve with a knee injury. He was carted off. We'll see what that means. It looks like it's an MCL sprain. We'll have an MRI on his knee. Candidate for IR, but again, they are hopeful that even if he goes on IR, that gives him a month to figure out if he's coming back. He can come back. So the hope is he'll be back for the playoffs. But my God, I already had a little bit of pause for the Patriots. This gives me a little bit more.
And I think that it should. That is the number one concern for me right now with this Patriots team. Not only is it Will Campbell who left yesterday, but it was also Jared Wilson, their left guard, who left early in the first quarter with an ankle injury. So you're looking at two pieces on the left side of your line on Drake May's blind spot that are out. It could be out for a foreseeable future. So they were able to find a way to win yesterday, as ugly as it was. And the Patriots offense had zero business struggling as much as they did against that crap Bengals defense. You still find a way to win. And in the NFL, that's the most important thing. But moving forward, the Patriots have a manageable schedule moving forward. Yes, they have dates with the Bills and the Ravens upcoming. They get the Giants, they get the Jets, they get the Dolphins. Let's say the Patriots win the games that they're supposed to and lose the games against the Bills and the Ravens. They're still 13-4. Like, they're still in good position. But I would be looking for returns for both their left tackle and left guard for the postseason. That is the most important thing for this Patriots team moving forward.
Yeah, I just have a little bit of, whenever a team's way ahead of schedule, I look around and I'm like, okay, is this sustainable? I don't know. You know me. I like proof of concept. And then the other portion of it is we don't really have proof of concept of what this is going to look like in a playoff game in the middle of January. It's a standard we talk a lot about in the NBA. Every single time there's a good team in the NBA, we step back and say, well, I haven't seen him do it in the playoffs. That hits different. I watched Mahomes last night or yesterday afternoon do Mahomes things, and that's when you step back and say, yeah, there's a reason certain guys and certain brands have that sort of benefit of the doubt. The Patriots just haven't been in this situation long enough for me to know what it's going to look like in January. And that is an unfair reason to have caution, but I'll admit that. And then I'll also admit that it gives me caution, whether it's Drake May or whether it's Mike Vrabel or whether it's the team or whether it's the offensive line or whether it's the defense. Like I've said several times, I wish they had gone out and aggressively gotten themselves a playmaker on the offensive side of the ball at the trade deadline. But even those questions just come really down to the fact that we haven't seen it yet. So it feels like I'm discrediting the Patriots. I'm not. I'm just in wait and see mode before I can buy in. What about the number 2 seed currently? Thank you. The number 2 seed, the Denver Broncos. All right. I think my biggest concern with the Denver Broncos, my favorite word, the overthrow. That's right. Bo Nix, the overthrow. It's alarming how inaccurate he can be at the dumbest times sometimes. So, once we're down to the last 4 minutes of the game, I'm not sure there's a quarterback right now in the AFC I want more than Bo Nix. My God, the way he's playing in clutch this year is epic. But you got to get to clutch to be there, and I do not trust Bo Nix to be able to do that against the best of the best, considering the way it has looked at times this year.
Bo Nix throws picks. Overthrow. I mean, I think the nicknames, they write themselves. It's Bo Nix. I think that is the concern, the sole concern to me about this Broncos team. I mean, my goodness, you look at that defense, nothing to be concerned about there. And I have critiqued Sean Payton's play calling. Like the backwards throw on 3rd and 1 against the Raiders will literally haunt my dreams. Sean, what are we doing? So there has been some concern about Sean Payton, his play calling, but overall, it's Sean Payton. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been there before. Like, I'm not going to be concerned about Sean Payton in the postseason unless he shows me in the postseason that there's reason to be concerned about him. He's been there before, not worried about it. It's Bo Nix. It's Bo Nix making a boneheaded throw. That's another one. A boneheaded throw. A boneheaded throw in the postseason, and he just does too much for this defense to overcome. So to me, it's Bo Nix, and that's really it that concerns me about this Broncos team.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with the way the Broncos do everything else. And that's part of why when they're in, I say 4-minute offense because everything runs with a different pace there. And quarterbacks will tell you that have played in the league for a minute that the last 4-minute offense is probably the easiest stuff for quarterbacks to just be able to process because you're moving with pace and everything's quick. You can kind of get the ball in and out of your hands quickly. Bo does that so well. If they're in a close game with Sean Payton as their head coach and with this defense, I think that they can win that close game. I just worry about Bo being efficient enough when he's playing a team that can take advantage of the mistakes that he makes, and then can he control his adrenaline? I think those are all real questions for him. Let's look at the number 3 seed in the AFC after yesterday, the Indianapolis Colts. The biggest issue you see with the Indianapolis Colts is?
We saw it yesterday. We saw it against Kansas City. Their ability to close games out. The fact that they get get a little tight. They clench up a little bit late in those games. I mean, we saw it. They had 4 3-and-outs to end that game. When things started to click offensively for the Chiefs, the Colts couldn't do anything. And 3-and-out in overtime, you punted away to Patrick Mahomes in OT. As soon as that happened, I thought, yep, they done. They gone. This game is over. So that is it to me. Kind of similar to what you said about the Patriots. There's an element of being there before that I think is incredibly valuable in the postseason. And this Colts team, there's so many parts of it are new. Daniel Jones, I know he's technically been there before, but it's not like Daniel Jones has an abundance of postseason experience that we can count on and fall back on. So I think it's that. Their biggest flaw is closing out against the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens of the AFC.
I don't disagree with that. I think part of that comes back to, I continue to say, what do they do on 3rd and 7? Like you and I have talked about this before. Like my big concern is what's your offense on 3rd and 7? If you look yesterday, Josh Downs had 2 catches on 6 targets. Like that's not what everybody's looking for. Alec Pierce only got 1 catch here. We keep talking about the weapons like they work, but the weapons yesterday were really just Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren. It was that and nothing else. They've got to have a method to how they're going to win on days where Jonathan Taylor gets shut down, especially in January. I keep envisioning what it's going to look like when it's a January football game that's ugly and it just gets to some sort of a slog and it's like your feet are in the mud. How do you win that football game? And how much do we trust Daniel Jones to be able to make the plays that they need to make in that process? Also, not for nothing, the fact that they took the ball first in overtime, like the new overtime rules are both teams get an opportunity to possess no matter what
I hated
happens.
that.
So it was such a weird decision to me when you're taking on Patrick Mahomes, because even if you score a touchdown, you're telling Mahomes you're going to need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. You're still going to have to stop Mahomes. It didn't make any sense. So to your point, the having not been there, I thought that bit Shane Steichen in the butt a little bit yesterday too. Let's get one more here. The Baltimore Ravens. The biggest issue we have with can I just say that my biggest issue with the Ravens is I'm not sure they're actually good. I kept watching. Yeah. I watched yesterday's game with an open mind. I went into yesterday's game and I was like, okay, why? I kept asking myself, why does it look so bad against the Jets? And you really had to bend over backwards. Like I needed to be a Cirque du Soleil actress, like whatever acrobat, to be able to touch my toes the way that I was bending over to figure out the why on it. And like maybe the why is just that the Ravens aren't very good because nothing came easy yesterday. Lamar felt out of whack. It felt out of sync. I keep saying I want to find a way for 3rd and 7. I don't know what the Ravens' identity is on offense right now. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. I don't know what their 5 go-to plays are. We're this late in the season, and I don't have any idea what Baltimore is. That's what we say about bad football teams. So maybe the answer is the Ravens just aren't good.
I don't know what it is. It's just not right. And I don't trust their defense. I guess it's getting better the healthier that they're getting, but then Kyle Hamilton gets banged up yesterday. Lamar Jackson doesn't look right. He doesn't look 100%. He looks hesitant. He doesn't look totally sure of himself. And we're talking about a Lamar Jackson-led offense that at times, in the past has just looked so cool and so smooth and so inevitable. And this year it just feels, I think, to Benjamin Solik's point there in his tweet, it's clunky. Even on a Derrick Henry day where he finds the end zone twice, it didn't feel easy. That the offense isn't explosive enough. The defense isn't getting better enough to overcome an offense that sputters at times. That I feel like we keep giving the Ravens the benefit of the doubt. We give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt a lot, but they proved yesterday why they deserve that benefit of the doubt. Week over week over week, the Ravens aren't showing me that they deserve a benefit of the doubt, that they deserve to be talked about in the same way that we talked about the Ravens of the past, the Ravens of 23 and 24. The 25 Ravens feel like a very far cry from that.
Well, and this is also a Ravens team that if you look back over the last, 6 games against Chicago, Derrick Henry, 71 yards, 3.4 per carry. Then the next week, 119, 6.3. Wow. Then the week after that, 75, 3.8. Whoa. Then last week, 103, 6.7. Now 64, 3. Like they are as up and down as could possibly be, not only in Derrick Henry's yardage, but in his yards per attempt, which tells you that they're just inconsistent. Like the fact that they were able to run the ball with success against Cleveland, which makes no sense to me. But then you can't run the ball at all against the Jets without Quinnen Williams. Makes no sense to me. I just cannot rely on the Baltimore Ravens. I cannot trust the Baltimore Ravens to execute anything. And I'm not used to saying that. I don't know how you fix that. I genuinely don't know how you fix a team that you can't trust because it just doesn't feel like they can execute the very simple things that are in front of them. And that's why, I mean, the real breakdown of all of this is I don't trust any of the AFC best team. I just don't. This year, I don't think there's any clear.
It's hard to trust.
I'm out on all of it. I have trust issues. I do not have trust issues with the great Stephen Godfrey. We're going to figure out what we should be making about Lane. Where's he headed? Plus, actual football talk from the weekend. Maybe. Depends. I mean, it is Lane. We'll talk about it next. Does Ole Miss Lane Kiffin's statement mean coach is probably leaving? It's a really good question for a long statement made by the athletic director of Ole Miss that essentially said, we'll update everybody after the Egg Bowl on what's next for coach. To break that down, Stephen Godfrey joins the show now. All right, what do we make of it? Like, what was the point? What's the point of putting out a statement that only raises more questions than answers?
Because it's a reality show. It's not real. It's all fake. Okay. What I've been saying over on College Football Inquirer is that this is now officially in the realm of pro wrestling, and that's not a joke. I'm very serious about this. Okay, I'm going to close my eyes and remember what I talked about the last time I was on this show, because it's been approximately 7 years since I was on last Monday in the Lane Kiffin saga. Now, I believe we left that segment saying it was kind of like Ole Miss 1A, Florida 1B, and he's probably not going to LSU. So, of course, now if you could just flip that upside down now, of course, that LSU would sort of be your category leader as of this moment, and that Ole Miss, and now I would say Florida's a distant third. But one of the amazing things about this search that's completely different than any other search that I've ever covered, except another Lane Kiffin search, he keeps everybody alive. I don't really know how to describe it. I really believe that Lane Kiffin is so commitment phobic and so self-centered and it just really much enjoys this part of the process more than any other football coach, that he has this ability to keep everybody on the line until the last minute. I really can't compare this to any search except the last one when he almost went to Auburn in 22.
With that, so Lane Kiffin, we are talking about the ultimate internet troll that loves to stir the pot. He is represented by Jimmy Sexton, who is as close to the czar of college football as we have, who is the ultimate opportunist when it comes to representing his clients. So how much can we make of the statement that was released by Ole Miss's athletic director, the report that Ross Dellinger put out about LSU's reported offer that they gave him, all of these things that we have heard and all of these things that have been reported, how much can we take those all at face value, and how much do we have to consider that we are working with Lane Kiffin and Jimmy Sexton?
Everything that's reported is true. That's what's so insane, even when it's contradictory. Like Ross, obviously, my co-host on Inquirer, is an impeccable reporter. None of us doubt that a formal offer has been made by LSU. That's real.
Mhm.
None of us doubt that a counter offer has been established by Ole Miss, or that the interest in the conversations with Florida aren't real. Everything is real. This is what I'm saying, is that he excels so much in the space of misinformation. There's a lot of interesting things here. When we're done with this, two institutions are going to have to say, we were left at the altar. And when you think about a normal college football head coach, like a search, you always want to have a level of sort of secrecy and subterfuge, because if a guy rejects you as a major institution like LSU or Florida especially, you don't want to say, oh yeah, you know what, we made a pitch and he didn't want us. That's what happened to Auburn in 22. But this is Lane Kiffin. This is why it's so different. And that's why, like, somebody's going to come away from this looking terrible. And it's actually, Ole Miss is, I'll talk about them in a second, because I think people would be shocked to know how many influential people around that program are ready to move on, because they've dealt with this year after year after year. But one of LSU or Florida is going to look terrible coming out of this. That's the part that feels so different and unique.
So talk about Ole Miss. You just said you're talking about them in a second. What's going on?
Could you imagine dealing with this every day? Could you imagine, think of this as a relationship, guys. Okay. All right. Just like not a marriage necessarily, but a relationship where you're constantly in this amount of existential insecurity with an individual. And then however we can draw this metaphor out into a relationship, like Lane Kiffin, you know how many division championships he has?
None.
Do you know how many conference championships he has?
None.
How many national champions?
None.
Right. Okay. Ole Miss is kind of like, I feel like Ole Miss went out to brunch with its friends and they were like, girl, you need to leave him. Like this, we're about tired of this. Okay. Because with the 1 foot out the door in perpetuity thing, there are a lot of key influential check writers who have built that really admirable and influential NIL model that Ole Miss has, and which, by the way, that's the reason that they are nationally relevant right now. That's the reason why they're going to head to the playoff. Yes, Lane Kiffin is a gifted offensive play caller, but he's also incredibly flaky. When you talk to coaches around the country about him, he's not like Lane Kiffin is not the ideal CEO. So if you have a really important golf tournament in April and you got to go shake some hands, or you got to go make some high school coach happy, like Kirby Smart's going to do that. In fact, Kirby Smart's already going to make sure it's done, right? If you have something important to do and that's very like unsexy in sort of the process of being a head coach, like Mike Elko is going to get that done, right? Lane Kiffin is as squirrely and flaky on the inside of an athletics building as you would think he is, right? That has worn on Ole Miss. And I think the straw, I really do feel like the straw that broke them was this past Thursday going into that Friday morning meeting with the chancellor and athletic director at Ole Miss, because they are now staring at an individual who is seriously considering, if not deciding to, leave a playoff team. And if you're going to invest this much money and you're going to invest this much NIL in a human being that's going to stare at an actual path to a national championship and say, I kind of want to go over here now, then what are you doing? Right? And there are several coaches right now who are inquiring about the potentially soon to be open Ole Miss job. So Ole Miss feels very confident in its market position. They know they're going to lose the press conference because Lane is PR. Lane is the master of the optics, right? Like you're not going to get that back. And if he goes to LSU and as old as that rivalry is, then the Tigers get to brag for a year. But there are a lot of coaches in college football that are not involved in either program who have told me this thing's going to look very silly in 3 years. Because Lane Kiffin has a tendency, if not an established history, of amplifying up moments to make them as big as possible about himself and then not following through on the football field. last year's a great example at Ole Miss. That last year's team was supposed to be the one that made the run, and they busted out in 2 conference games, one at home against a terrible Kentucky team that finished sub 500, and then they got upset on the road at Florida, and it was a moot point, right? All that money they spent on NIL, Jackson Dart and Warren Nolan and all those guys, all for naught. They went to the Peach Bowl, right? Like, doesn't matter, not in the playoff. So I think there's a backlash coming. I think this is the last time in his career that Lane will ever be able to manage to make it 100% about himself, and I think he's enjoying that. But a lot of people around the industry are really like gag reflex level fed up with Lane Kiffin. And there are also a lot of buyer beware concerns amongst some certain people at LSU and Florida as well, because they do see the track record. But they can't turn away from this enigmatic guy. He's on TV and he's on social media. And, oh, man, he's such a great offensive play caller. That's so sexy to these guys. So it's going to be really fascinating how this one turns out. I do think we're going to look back in 3 years and be like, oh, man, do you guys remember when the entire league was all wrapped up over Lane Kiffin? Because at some point in the next 2 years, he's going to be coaching a 9-3 or 8-4 team for like $12 to $15 million a year. And the boosters are going to want to kill him.
I think that just shows how impressive it is when you can go 10-2 or 11-1 at Ole Miss and make the playoffs, that everyone will be bending over backwards for his efforts, even with all of the extracurriculars and the pain in the butt that comes with Lane Kiffin. But we'll get some college football playoff rankings tomorrow. Let's look at some bubble teams. I think it's fair to say Bama's even on the bubble. Vandy's on the bubble. Miami is on the bubble. Of all of these bubble teams, what is one team that you think has the best chance of finding themselves in the playoffs?
I think Alabama's fine. I am not one of those people that looks at the Iron Bowl and sees a lot of concern. I think it's a very talented Alabama team. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll win and they get in. The losses they've sustained the loss to Oklahoma they've sustained looks good. The problem is they have the worst loss going of any contender on that list. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of all that. Yeah, like Miami's a little dent and scratch, and it's really hard to talk about the ACC because of the way the conference title picture looks. But Alabama should be fine if they win out. They should be fine if they win out. I say asterisk. Now, you want to move on to Vanderbilt for a second. That's one where I think even if they handle Tennessee, they might be on the outside looking in because name the best Vanderbilt win. Well, I love the program. I live down the street from them. I always joked, I want Vanderbilt in the national title picture. It's a short commute, all that stuff, right? But, what's their best win? It could be this weekend against a ranked Tennessee team. It's probably a ranked Missouri team. Their best non-conference win is Virginia Tech, which I tend to think is a good reward for scheduling intent. I think that does still matter to the committee that you went out and you said, hey, let's sign a 1-1 with a Power 4 opponent. It's something that's really hurting Oregon right now. And I know you didn't list Oregon, Caroline, but I worry a little bit about them going into the Washington game even, which seems insane because it's funny. If the playoffs started tomorrow, I would probably put money on Oregon to go further than people expect. I really like the way they're built, but they have a schedule issue that they could not control. Penn State, they beat Penn State when Penn State was third in the country. Is anybody going to sit down and say they beat the number 3 team in the country now when we're talking about seeding and positioning? No. They scheduled Oklahoma State as an earnest attempt to get a P4 opponent. That is now statistically and with the record the worst Oklahoma State team of the last 35 years. They didn't know, they couldn't control that, right? This is a Big Ten problem that I think they're going to have to fix in the coming years because they brought all these West Coast teams were supposed to come in. And we're supposed to take Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan, and we're going to mash them together with USC and Oregon, and we're going to have these blockbuster games every week to compete with the SEC. Guys, does it feel like they had that this year? No. Penn State fell apart completely. USC is still not quite ready for prime time. We've had a ton of coaches in the Big Ten. The James Franklin implosion caused more than just problems for Penn State here. I think that's what we're looking at now for Oregon.
Are you 100% look, let me be a troll for a second, and people will hate this.
Okay.
You said you think Alabama's in. And I know that the committee in the past, having covered the committee for a decade, does not typically penalize the loser of a conference championship game in these situations. But Alabama could pick up their third loss in the SEC championship game. They could get their asses kicked by A&M. If they get run by A&M, are you sure that a 3-loss Alabama team is really in the college football playoff, given all the rest of the chaos that's happening around?
I'm confident in the corruption of college football that a Big Ten or SEC championship game loser. No, I'm saying this is not a joke. You think about, look at Ross's reporting from this offseason. The amount of control those two leagues are trying to take over the entire bracket and what we're going to do with the eventual bracket expansion. If those championship game participants, like the losers, the runners-up, are knocked out because of their participation in said championship game, Greg Sankey's going to have somebody killed. Like, no, that's not going to happen. If you're in Atlanta and if you're in Indianapolis, especially because it looks like those teams are going to walk in undefeated, sorry, Michigan, then you're in the playoff. You might not be a home team in the first round, but you're in the playoff.
I mean, we know the SEC and the Big Ten, like we feel confident in them being national powerhouses. I am not very confident that the ACC has anything or any team or any representative that can even sniff being a national powerhouse. Is there a path for Duke?
Yeah, it's mathematically possible. Isn't it great? Isn't this just a wonderful system?
Disgusting.
It is. I'm so glad, Caroline, I'm so glad you brought that up. What a wonderful system we have, right? Hey guys, do you remember divisions? Do you remember divisions? Where we would take like 6 teams and 6 teams, and the winner of each would. You remember that? Like that crazy revolutionary mathematical concept. Look at the ACC right now, guys. Duke is still alive. Miami is still alive. Georgia Tech just got rolled at home by Pitt. They're still alive. I think mathematically the most likely scenario now is either SMU and Virginia, mathematically, in terms of the percentage odds. It's SMU and Virginia or Pitt and SMU. But it's probably going to be one of those 3 teams, Pitt, SMU, Virginia. Do any of those teams inspire confidence out of the first round? No. As it stands right now, if the committee doesn't do something incredibly weird, then an SEC team at home will host an ACC champion, and it's going to feel advantageous. The problem with the ACC is actually a Miami problem still, in my opinion, because they were the most talented team in terms of NIL and bringing in blue chips. They just have Mario Cristobal as a head coach. And so you're guaranteed one just absolute painstaking, like just one inexplicable loss a season, if not 2. And now they're on the outside looking in, trying to get there. I really don't feel like they're going to get in as an at-large. Fitz, I'll make our mutual friend Golick Jr. happy by saying I have zero problem with Notre Dame walking into this playoff, even though that they lost to Miami, 3 months ago. Because I do think it's about your cumulative body of work, and Miami down the stretch is way too unstable.
Well, stick there for a second, because that's what people are going to freak out about, right? This is my analogy. I've used Caroline before.
Okay.
But I think that the college football playoff is a little bit like walking up to a coffee bar and like at the hotel, and like you got cream and sugar and coffee, and everybody puts different amounts in. So head-to-head gets some weight from some people, but if Miami and Notre Dame end up with the same record, and the eye test tells me Notre Dame's a better football team than Miami right now, like I just believe on a neutral field that they would win, right? But they didn't win when they played earlier. The hell am I supposed to do with head-to-head when we have head-to-head, even though I don't believe it's really indicative of where these 2 teams are?
It can't be the end-all be-all, because the data points in the way we structure this sport, there's not enough data to where head-to-head can eliminate someone outright. What if Ole Miss and Oklahoma end up with 2 losses each? That's the first one I can think of off the top of my head, because we were talking about it on the Inquirer yesterday. There are several situations where you have, Texas is on the outside, right? But with 3 losses, they beat a 2-loss Vanderbilt team. So, when it comes down to it, it can't be the ace card that I think a lot of people want it to be. And if you're a Miami fan, I understand the frustration there, but don't throw 4 picks against Louisville. Like you gotta win those games on the random Friday night midseason. It's a detriment. Now this is where I will entertain criticism of Alabama, because nothing is more different in the resume of college football than week 0 to week 2, because we don't have a preseason. These are 18-year-olds in certain circumstances. You don't get a chance to adjust or really season the team, and you kind of figure out who you are, I think, by week 4, which is now week 5 is when we start firing people these days. So yes, it was week 1, but how bad does that loss still look with the body of work that Florida State's put together? And then also how good Alabama looked down the stretch. It kind of makes the Florida State loss even more inexplicable. So I don't, Fitz, like I get the head-to-head argument. I do think it does feel like logic prevails sometimes. But I think at the end of the day, everybody, and I know committee members feel this way too in general, is it really your cumulative body of work has to speak for itself in total. I do believe in quality loss. I do believe strongly in scheduling intent. Part of that is like an emotional thing as a college football fan, because if we get rid of scheduling intent, week 1's going to look terrible in a couple of years, guys. UT Chattanooga is going to be making the rounds. No offense to the Mocs, but like it's going to be a lot of sisters of the poor nonsense. Like this is a problem. So scheduling intent has to matter. Quality losses have to matter. Like going in and saying, hey, Texas A&M and Notre Dame, they didn't need to play each other. What a hell of a year both of them could have if they didn't. I don't think that you can take this. I mean, like a 3-loss Texas has an argument because they said, yeah, I'll go to the shoe against the defending national champions with a first-time starter. We have to reward that or we're going to hurt the regular season. This is my stunt. This is why I don't get as mad about the 12-13 divide if there's a situation in which it's going to encourage people to be more conservative with their overall scheduling and we move away from cross-pollinating these teams. As we move into 9-game conference schedules, that's another problem. So I could rant about this for a while, but head-to-head to me has to take a back seat because of the good of the sport. For the good of the sport.
You can hear more of that great analysis on College Football Inquirer. Obviously, follow him on social media at 38 Godfrey. Appreciate you, my friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Right.
Is that a Barcelona
mug?
from Dose?
I sent you a mug.
Oh my God, Caroline!
I mailed you the mug.
It's my favorite coffee in America.
That's my favorite.
Not
Hey,
sponsored.
I stopped this morning after school drop off. That is a hell of an eye. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Very well done. Yes, it is the
I know
greatest
Godfrey
coffee in America.
I think
We're
you gave
all
me a fake
Nashvilleians
address
here.
I think you gave
I
me
did
a
not
fake
give you a
address
fake address.
Somebody
I think
around
Fitz is-
Nashville is running around with the Yahoo Sports Daily mug
Fitz.
at this point. I'll send you another
Commit,
one. I will
Fitz.
send you another one.
Commit, Fitz.
Look, I'll send you another one. He's stealing them from us. Ja Morant stealing money from the NBA. More drama from Ja. We'll tell you about it next.
And then with Ja, he's a funny guy. He has a lot to say all the time, especially for a guy who rarely takes accountability. But you know what? That's for another day.
What did Ja have to say on this occasion?
Nothing of intelligent depth. It was really just his just running his mouth, and he's been running his mouth for a long time. And it's funny to run your mouth when you're on the bench. It's kind of the story of his career so far, just leaving us wanting more. You know, we all want to see him out there and do his best, but he's just been letting a lot of other stuff get in the way of that. We need that in the NBA. We need our best players to be out there, and when you're a star, it comes with a great responsibility. And I hate to see that go to waste.
That is Klay Thompson calmly responding, and maybe that's the worst of all, when a troll gets in your face and just decides to go nuts. Ja Morant up in Klay Thompson's face with the quote, "You a bum now," and obviously it created some conversation on the court, to put it lightly, and Klay was asked about it afterwards, and that was his response. A very measured, calm response from Klay regarding Ja, but let's not get it twisted, Caroline. In the process of that calm, measured response, he eviscerated him. He absolutely ripped him to shreds there.
But did he say anything that was wrong or inaccurate or a false portrayal of what Ja has been over the last several years? I mean, Klay said, he's running his mouth. He's running his mouth from the bench. He always has something to say, so on and so forth. And that is kind of where Ja is at. I think that Klay Thompson very accurately pointed out where Ja is at this point. Like, if you are Ja Morant, you can't be up in people's faces, especially Klay Thompson. Look, Klay Thompson's not the best player by any stretch of the imagination this season, but Klay Thompson's won championships. Klay Thompson's been at the pinnacle of the sport. Klay Thompson is very well regarded in the league, very well respected and well liked in the league by coaches, by players, by fan bases. Like, I don't know who really has a bad thing to say about Klay Thompson that has actual legitimate merit and legs. So Ja's out here just continuing to run his mouth when Ja can't get out of his own way. Ja can't stay on the court. That Ja doesn't have any basis for starting beef with Klay Thompson. And, I think the thing that Klay Thompson pointed out that I think is fair is we all want to see Ja out there and playing. It is so fun to watch Ja Morant when Ja Morant is cooking, but he hasn't been able to be out there in the court. So it just feels like it's like a gnat, like kind of just in your face, and it's annoying. That's kind of what Ja Morant was to Klay Thompson. Just get out of my way. Just quit being annoying and put your money where your mouth is. And if you want to talk the talk, that's fine. But you can't talk the talk if you don't walk the walk. And Ja Morant has not been walking any walk this season.
I mean, that's the part of this trash talking that's lost on me. Like, Klay Thompson is 35, Ja Morant is 26, right? There's almost a decade between these two. And I think the important part of the quote is "you're a bum now," which acknowledges the fact that even if you think that Klay is a shell of what he used to be as a player, he's accomplished more in his career than Ja could ever imagine. Ja can't even get on the court. Ja can't stay on the court. And when he is on the court, he hasn't won anything near to the level that Klay Thompson has won. So, like, the conversation of "you a bum now" implies that Ja's accomplished anything near where Klay was when Klay wasn't a bum in Ja Morant's eyes. Like, look, at this point, if we're being honest about Ja Morant, he's a more relevant character in 2K than he is an actual basketball player. Like, he's great on a video game, and on an actual court, he's meaningless because he can't stay healthy enough. And when he is healthy, the team doesn't win enough. And when they do win, they're answering questions about everything that Ja's doing that has nothing to do with basketball. Tom Haberstroh tweeted out games played over the last 3 seasons. Klay Thompson, 166. Ja Morant, 71. Like, I don't really know how you can call anybody a bum when you make no tangible difference to the team that you play for anymore. Like, you are supposed to be the landmark billboard that makes your entire franchise relevant, and you can't stay on the court long enough for any of that to happen. And this behavior continues to just remind me when everybody says, "Oh, you know what, Ja needs a fresh start. Let's trade Ja. He gets out of Memphis. He gets a fresh start." Maybe the problem isn't Memphis. Maybe the problem is Ja. And there are some people that just, no matter where you put them, there's still going to be a problem. And at this point, the city of Memphis, the organization of the Grizzlies, they continue to be patient. They continue to try and make it work because they know they need the brand and the power that Ja brings to it. But for what? I mean, for what? Like, you're out here talking your talk from the bench because you can't stay on the court. You can't make an impact. And I'm not sure anybody actually trusts. Like, I don't think Ja could go anywhere in the league and not still at this point be a pain in the butt. I don't know what he offers a team other than a mouthpiece and a billboard, because what he offers on the court doesn't actually equate to anything. So maybe Klay is a bum now. But maybe Josh should look in the mirror and ask, what value do I bring to any NBA franchise today?
I'd rather have Klay Thompson than John Morant on my team right now. And maybe that sounds crazy. But I don't like, what value does John Morant bring to any team in the league if he can't be on the court, if he is more of a sideshow than he is a spectacle on the basketball court? Like, let's not put this on Memphis, okay? This is not Memphis's fault. There have been plenty of players that have come and gone through the Grizzlies organization that haven't gotten even at a fraction of the amount of trouble that John Morant has gotten in. At this point, I feel like Ja would get in trouble in Utah. And I feel like it's really hard to find any sort of shenanigans to get into in Utah. But you make a fair point, because we do talk about this a lot. Ja just needs to get out of Memphis, needs to get out of Memphis. Okay, well, who's trading for John Morant right now? What would you be willing to trade for John Morant? A guy that has all of the upside in the world. His best basketball, I think, physically is ahead of him. If he can just stay on the straight and narrow, I can't trust him to stay on the straight and narrow. I would love to sign up for the basketball that John Morant can bring your organization, but he hasn't been doing a lot of that. So, like, sure, if the Grizzlies want to entertain trade talks, that's fine. But what are you going to get back in return for John Morant to make that trade worth it? Because I'm not trading valuable assets for Ja when I can't trust Ja.
The hardest part, I've talked to people that cover the Grizzlies quite a bit, and they remind me that the organization needs John Morant because he's a selling piece. He helps move tickets. He helps keep the arena more full. And I get that. And it's almost like you're trapped in this situation where the very selling piece that you have, the reason that people are interested in your franchise, also is not something that your franchise can bank on to win a bunch of games. It's not something that's going to make your team great. Like, if the question is, can the Grizzlies win with John Morant? I think the answer to that has been proven, even with some pieces around him. Like, let's not get it twisted. Jaren Jackson Jr. has played really well throughout the course of the last several years, even when he's had to figure out whether or not he's got John next to him or he doesn't have John next to him. So they've tried to put pieces around him. Like, at what point do you just look around and say, man, like, none of this is really worth it? Like, our return on investment on John Morant just isn't worth it. And it's weird because, Caroline, you're right. Like, I think other teams look around and say, well, what's Ja worth to me? But to the Grizzlies, he still has tremendous value because he's one of the few things that reminds people that Memphis has a basketball team nationally. Like, he is that star that makes your brand part of the national conversation. So it's a tough spot for Memphis to be in, even because, frankly, even if they want to give him a fresh start, they can't get tangible value back for him. But what do they really need for him? Like, they're stuck in the middle of no man land trying to figure out how to win, and I don't think they're going to win enough with Ja. So eventually, they're just going to have to send him somewhere else. And my hope is that when that happens, Ja has a Luka-like awakening where, like, he suddenly changes some things in his life and gets things on track. I just don't know what proof of concept we have. And when guys like Klay are coming out so calmly telling you just how worthless his words are, that speaks to something about the way the league perceives you as well. I think this is all a statement, not just on Memphis, but more importantly, a statement on Ja.
I think that's what it is. That, he has to take responsibility for it. You can't wag your finger at an organization or a city for the actions of an individual who is an adult and can make his own decisions. And I think you have to ask, at what point is it just not worth it for Memphis anymore? Because you have to put butts in seats and you have to sell tickets and you want to be nationally relevant. And that, Ja Morant is your ticket to being nationally relevant and putting butts in seats. But at what point, and I don't think we're there now, but at what point is it just not worth it anymore? The lack of trade value that you might get in return for Ja, the fact that you're trading away a superstar, at what point does that look more attractive than dealing with the circus that John Morant brings?
Yeah, when the jersey sales dip, it's unfortunate. Like, look, Memphis isn't going to win, and they're going to have to figure it out. I think the right strategy is for Memphis, honestly. This is the first time I've said this in all the years I've watched this basketball team. I think it's time to just trade Ja, start the rebuild, start over, take the hit, and figure out what to do next. I just don't know that I think Ja can go anywhere, and I think we're going to get a different version of John Morant. All right, we'll keep breaking down, obviously, whatever happens from there, because Ja's going to be in the conversation for weeks to come until we know where his final destination is. But coming up next, it's Monday. We've got a Monday Night Football matchup for the ages, a big one with a lot on the line. Caroline thinks that team is absolutely about to dominate. We'll tell you why. The last time the Panthers beat the 49ers, week 1 of the 2017 season, 23-3. Also happened to be Christian McCaffrey's first regular season game. That is a keep pounding. Hashtag keep pounding, because tonight we get it. We get an opportunity, man. We've gone back and forth. We have lived through the teeter-totter, the seesaw of life with the Carolina Panthers, trying to figure out one week if they're relevant and the next week if they're not, trying to figure out if they belong, trying to figure out if they don't. Carolina gets, look at me getting that right, gets the Panthers. This game against San Francisco feels like finally the massive prove-it moment for Carolina.
This is a prove-it moment for Carolina. And for all of you people rolling your eyes at this game, like, the Carolina Panthers, don't look now, but the Carolina Panthers have an opportunity to do the funniest thing and lead the NFC South after the Bucs lost last night. Like, there is a very, very clear and obvious path for the Panthers to make the postseason and to win the division. We'll hear more about Baker Mayfield's injury, but if Baker's out for the season, I'm not hoping for that. I would never hope for that. But if he is, and it looked rough last night, that shoulder injury, the Panthers, I think, will win the division. Like, I think there's good value if you want to be a betting woman. There's good value to putting some money on the Panthers winning the division. The Panthers can win this game tonight. And I think it's fair to say this might be the biggest game that the Panthers have had since the 2015 season. When they went to the Super Bowl, obviously lost to Peyton Manning and the Broncos in that 2015 Super Bowl. We consulted our resident expert of all things Carolina sports, Doug Branson, a producer on the show. We asked him that, is this the biggest game in a decade since the 2015 season? And he said the only thing that might rival this game tonight was Bryce Young's debut, just given how much they gave up to trade up and to draft Bryce Young first overall. But this game tonight, with an opportunity to beat the 49ers, with an opportunity to overtake the Buccaneers in the division, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that.
Look at that schedule. Look at this schedule. This is an awakening moment for Carolina, but also when you see what's left, to be quite honest, the simple answer here is if the Panthers deserve to be in this conversation, they will have earned it. This isn't a soft schedule. Let's roll through it like we're watching both the Bills and the Patriots have the advantage of. You've got San Francisco, then the Rams, the Buccaneers twice, and Seattle. You've got 5 brutal games left through the course of the season. Now, Carolina has put themselves squarely in a situation where they control their own destiny, right? Like those 2 games against Tampa Bay, you're right. I'm not sure Tampa Bay is actually all that great. And if there's no Baker, man, I feel really good about this for Carolina. This is such a moment, and this is what every team has to go through. Every team has to go through the spot where we step back and we say, I'm not sure. Do we really believe in them? And it feels like it's taken a minute this year. Most years we get right to the teams that surprise and we fall in love with them. But this year, because we've had fall in love stories with the redemption of Daniel Jones and fall in love with the New England Patriots and fall in love with Sam Darnold and who are the Seahawks. Like, we've had all these other fall in love stories. We've almost forgotten this, right? Like, and I'm looking at a Panthers team that, to your point, Bryce Young's coming off of a wild historic game for his career, the best game of his career by far, on a team with Rico Dowdle, who's just consistently run the football over and over and over again. Like, I'm looking at this Carolina team saying, man, at some point we have to pay attention to it. The thing is, this year we've had other stories that we've gravitated to. But on Monday Night Football, with the world watching in this game against the 49ers team that gets Brock Purdy back, like this is a true proven opportunity for Carolina in every beautiful way. That's what I love about their opportunity here, to show the world who they are as a brand.
The offense is clicking, and we saw that on full display last week. And this is a 49ers defense that is an absolute shell of itself. No Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner. It's a far different San Francisco defense than it was at the beginning of the season. Now, something about this 49ers team is they're going to figure it out offensively somehow, some way. Even with all the injuries they have, they'll figure it out. But I think this is a Panthers team that if we see the same offense that we've seen the last several weeks with Rico Dowdle running the rock the way that he is, Bryce Young having a career day, then I can absolutely see the Panthers getting a win tonight on Monday Night Football. We're going to be forced to pay attention to them.
Yeah, this is such a great moment for the Panthers moving forward. We'll see how it plays out. In the meantime, come back tomorrow morning. We'll get you all the reaction. For Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz. We'll be back right here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Hang out with us tomorrow on Yahoo Sports Daily.